So you have the study called Mindful Multitasking, disentangling the effect of polychronicity on work, home conflict, and life satisfaction. So, I typically, when we hear multitasking, almost jump right away to, oh, this is a negative behavior to be engaged in. But you actually shared
Mhm.
maybe some counter approach if mindfulness was applied to multitasking. So tell us a little bit about that study and yeah, some big takeaways.
Yeah, so this is my first study actually I was involved with, and this actually was I co-authored this with Scott Dust and another colleague of ours who I mentioned earlier. Scott was the one who actually inspired me to get into flow research with his article, and so this study basically looked at the role of what they call polychronicity. This is kind of a fancy term for the idea that people prefer to do or think about multiple tasks at a time rather than focusing on one at a time. And so what we found basically was without mindfulness, if you're not a mindful person, or if you don't kind of have a mindful practice, then being a polychronic person, someone who multitasks or who has a preference for multitasking, leads to an imbalance or like what they call work-life conflict. So this is the idea that if you have problems at work, then those problems kind of spill into your kind of outside of work life, right? So if you have a bad day at work, then you're kind of a jerk when you go home, and that causes issues at home. Or if you have problems at home, then you know kind of come into work the next day, and those problems can spill into the workplace. And so what the study basically found was, like, barring mindfulness, people who multitask tend to have more of that work life conflict, and they're also less satisfied with their lives in general. And so that's obviously not a great thing, and it makes people think that multitasking is really bad, which there's a good amount of evidence for, right? But then we said, okay, well, what about people who are more mindful? And actually the study found that people who are more mindful and who are also polychronic end up having less of that work-life conflict, and they also experience more life satisfaction. So the idea is basically that by being mindful, you're actually able to separate those lives a little bit and those issues a little bit. You feel a little bit happier with your life in general. And so it kind of flips that relationship, which is really interesting and sort of surprising, right? I mean, you wouldn't really think that, and it just, I think the kind of underlying thing here is that mindfulness does help you to just separate yourself a little bit, like to decouple those things, like we kind of touched upon a little bit earlier, and to keep, again, like church and state a little bit separated, and realize, like, just because I had a bad day at work or just because I had a bad day at home doesn't mean that I have to let that spill over. And I'm able to handle kind of multiple tasks or multiple ideas in a more healthy way, I guess, because of the ability, or I don't know if I would draw like too strong of a connection here just with one study, but there's support for the idea that mindfulness helps us to manage multiple tasks at once, and to separate our different domains of life from each other.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.